Alrighty, let's give this a fucking go, shall we? I'm snotting all over the place, yeah? Ah. Ugh. Just checking this is working. Give us a minute there, bruv.
Alright, let's do this episode, but in future episodes we will look at that. But the point is, start with your body weight, because trust me, even though this is a body weight exercise,
trust me, you can fuck right off, bruv. Okay, let's do this shit. Let's fucking do this shit. Okay. Okay, you ready? All actions I go. Alright, 2, 1, and. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Muscle and Mind podcast, where we learn how to build a better body and brain so we can perform at our best in work, life, and play. In today's episode, I want to go over something that personally I am ridiculously passionate about, and that is the concept of emotional fitness. We're going to be covering what is emotional fitness, what is an emotion, and some very simple things you can put into practice today to improve your emotional fitness. So, before we go into any conversation on emotional fitness, we have to answer a very simple question. What is an emotion? Now, an emotion, as we define it, is a physiological and psychological sensation or response to our perceptions. So a physiological and psychological response to our perceptions. So an emotion has 3 core components to it. When we feel an emotion, we have, number 1, a physical sensation. Number 2, we have a pattern of focus, meaning we focus on certain things and ignore others. And number 3, we have an inner narrative, a story that is playing in our minds. And the combination of these things creates an emotion. And that emotion influences our behavior, meaning it influences us to do or not do certain things. So even if we just look at this definition of an emotion, there's a few things we need to break down. And let's work backwards. So when we look at it as influencing our behavior, this is really, to me, why emotions are so important. Because they literally influence everything we do and don't do. So logic would dictate, if we want to change behavior, if we want to change something in our lives, building an awareness and a regulation of our emotions is key, because that's really the root cause of the things we do and don't do. So if we want to achieve a goal, or if we just want to feel better in our day-to-day lives, controlling and understanding our emotions is an imperative part of that process. If we work our way backwards, we say that an emotion has those 3 components. Let's have a look at the physical sensation. Now, every emotion has a physical sensation that is associated with it. For example, just think to yourself for a moment and remind yourself of a time where you felt joy, right? Overwhelming amounts of joy and excitement. Chances are you felt a bit of fluttering, maybe in your chest. You had a little bit more energy in your body, right? Your blood was pumping, your eyes were wide, your face was nice and wide because you were smiling. So there's physical sensations that come along with emotions. Now, remind yourself of a time where you felt really guilty. Where you felt really guilty or you felt shame. Think about the physical sensations that came along with that emotion. You probably felt low energy. You were probably more slumped over. Your face was probably more frowned. You probably had that feeling in the pit of your stomach, right? You know that feeling? Where we hear this expression a lot. It hit me like a gut punch, because that emotion comes with a physical sensation, right? You can physically feel it in your body. So every emotion carries that physical sensation with it. Next, we had a pattern of focus. Now, consider those times again. Consider a time when you were excited versus a time where you were pessimistic, right? Chances are your patterns of focus were very different during excitement versus pessimism. Because when you're excited, your pattern of focus is look for the good, look for what's great, look what can go right. When you are feeling pessimistic or even anxious, feeling the emotion of anxiety, your pattern of focus is very different, isn't it? You're not focusing on what can go well, you're focusing on what's wrong. You're focusing on threats. You're focusing on what could happen in the future, and most likely, assuming that that possible outcome will be negative in some way. So every emotion carries with it a pattern of focus. And last but not least, every emotion comes with a story. And this is really a big part of what causes the root of an emotion, is the story that we tell ourselves. So think about those same two examples. Let's think of excitement and anxiety. If you had to analyze your thoughts during those emotions, they're probably very, very different, right? When you are excited, there is a different story that you are telling yourself about what is true and what is real versus when you're anxious. When I'm excited, my story is all about positivity. My story is all about how things are going to go great. Whereas when I'm anxious, my story is all about the big bad fear, right? The big bad future that could happen and will happen, right? What if this happens? What if I say something wrong? What if they took what I said in the wrong way? What if I fail that exam? So there's a story, there's a narrative. And without going too deep into this, that narrative is coming from our core beliefs. And that's because every emotion is centered around some kind of core belief. If I am excited, well, what would the assumptions that I would have to make be in order to feel that emotion? Well, the core belief that is, would be that something good is going to happen. If I'm anxious, the core belief is something bad is going to happen. Now, obviously, these are very general, and when we tell the story in our head, it's not so black and white. There's a lot more complexity to it. But when you really break it down, the core beliefs driving that emotion are just a story we've told ourselves about what is true. Not necessarily what is true, but rather the story we've told ourselves about what is true. So every emotion has these three parts: a physical sensation, a pattern of focus, and a story. And that story is usually linked to our core beliefs in that moment. So taking it a step back now to that definition. An emotion is a physiological and psychological response to our perceptions. When we look at physiological and psychological, hopefully now you can see where those tie in. The physiology is the sensation we feel. The blood rush, the feeling in our stomach, the energy or lack of energy, the posture we hold, and the way our body feels in general. The psychological elements of this are that pattern of focus, as well as that inner narrative that we are telling ourselves. But here is where I believe the most important piece of information comes in. A physiological and psychological response to our perceptions. To our perceptions. Not to the truth. Not to the facts. To our perceptions. Now, I'll tell you a story that I shared with a bunch of people the other day. They found it quite humorous. One day, I was walking down the road with my father-in-law. And my father-in-law is a crazy man, right? He is adventurous. He is not scared of anything, right? And as a matter of fact, he runs towards the danger. So as we're walking down this road, I look out in the distance and I see a snake. So immediately, I freak out. I slam on my brakes with my feet, and the emotion I felt was fear and anxiety. As soon as he saw it, the first thing he did was speed up, because the emotion he experienced was excitement. Because, ooh, there's a snake. Maybe I can grab it. Maybe it will bite me. Maybe it'll be friendly. Who knows, right? There's excitement behind it. So how is it that both of us saw the same thing and had a completely different emotional response? And it's because of our perceptions. It's because of our beliefs about what that thing means. To me, a snake means get out of there, run fast, not dealing with that. To him, it's an opportunity for excitement and an opportunity for fun. So our emotional response is not dictated by the facts. It's dictated by our perception of the facts. And that perception comes from our beliefs, our values, and our memories and upbringing, right? What we have been conditioned to believe is good, bad, right, wrong, etc., etc. Now, what's even funnier about that is as he got closer to the snake, to be honest, I wouldn't go any closer, what we realized is that it wasn't a snake at all. It was just a piece of rubber that looked like a snake. So, regardless of our different perceptions, we were both wrong, yet we both had completely different emotional reactions. So, that is really what an emotion is. It is a reaction to our perceptions, right? Not what is actually true. And I'm sure you can pick this up in your own life as well, right? Have you ever had a time where you thought someone did something or said something that was in some way harmful to you, right? You heard they said this thing or you heard they did this thing and it really pissed you off. So you spend the whole day getting angry and frustrated and role-playing in your head all the things you were going to say to them. You know how we do it. We're in the shower, showering, and we're playing out the argument that we're going to have. And somehow in the argument, we're always winning. But anyways, we go on this emotional tangent based on our perception of what happened. But later on, when you speak to the person and you communicate, you realize that it was just a misunderstanding. And there was actually just some broken communication along the way. And all of a sudden, what happens to the emotion? It disappears because our perception of the facts have changed. So that is really what an emotion is at its core. Now, there's a lot more complexity to this, of course, and we will go through this in other episodes. But that's really the best way I can think of summing up what an emotion really is. So this whole idea of an emotion is figuring out now, how can we become more acquainted with our emotions, in better control of our emotions? And while we're on that note, a lot of the time, and we see this specifically with men, right? What is the narrative? You shouldn't feel emotions, or emotions are bad in some way, right? Or men don't feel emotions, or whatever the story might be. The truth, the objective truth, is that emotions are a part of the human brain. Emotions are one of the only reasons we have survived this long. They give us feedback about what is happening. They give us feedback about the world and our perception of the world. I'd like to think of emotions like the lights on the dashboard of a car. When a light comes up on the dashboard of your car, it is a signal that is telling you that something needs to change. It's telling you that the battery is low, that the fuel is low, that the oil needs to be changed. This signal itself, the light, is not bad in of itself. What becomes bad or disruptive is how we respond to that signal. Now, there's a few different things you can do. You can get in the car, keep driving the car, and completely ignore the lights that come up. And a lot of the time, that's not the best strategy because eventually the car is going to break down and you'll deal with the problem sooner rather than later. Another option is we can get in the car and freak out because we have no idea what any of the signals mean and be in a world of stress and discomfort because of them. But the third option is to get in the car, calmly look at the lights, and figure out the message they're trying to tell us so that we can get to the root of the problem and fix the problem. And that brings us in to the main topic of today, which is emotional fitness. Because that is exactly what emotional fitness is. It is the ability to recognize our emotion, learn the message they're trying to send us, and take action to correct the root cause of the issue. To respond to the lights on the dashboard instead of freaking out or simply bottling them up and ignoring them. That is the core of emotional fitness. Now, when we look at emotional fitness, it really is about these two components: recognizing and understanding our emotions and regulating them. So I like to think of emotional fitness in the same way as physical fitness. So consider this. What is physical fitness? Physical fitness is really our ability to handle physical challenges. If I am very physically fit, I can handle a lot of physical challenges, whether it's lifting a weight or running up a hill or jumping over an obstacle. I'm able to handle the physical challenges in my environment with physical fitness. And emotional fitness works the exact same way. Think of this example. Imagine you have two people. One is fit, one is unfit, and you ask both of them to run up a steep hill, what is going to be the difference between those two people? Firstly, the fit person is going to reach the top of the hill faster. And secondly, the fit person is going to recover from the high heart rate and the deep breathing much faster than the unfit person, so that they're ready to tackle the next hill. Emotional fitness works the same way. An emotionally fit person is able to come up against a challenge, experience the emotion, which is the intensity that comes with that challenge, work through the emotion effectively, and return to an emotional baseline as quickly as possible so that they are ready to tackle the next challenge, the next hill that they need to walk against. And that is the core of emotional intelligence and emotional fitness. Being able to use our emotions, move through the negative ones, and reclaim that state of calmness and equanimity that allows us to think clearly and attack our challenges with vigor and perseverance and optimism. Because emotionally fit people, it's not that they don't experience emotional distress. Just like physically fit people don't not experience physical stress, high heart rate, sore muscles. The difference is that fit people are able to get through that and recover from it quickly so that they are able to tackle the next challenge. And that is the similarity, that is the crossover between physical and emotional fitness. Now, the beautiful part is that just like physical fitness, we can condition ourselves to be emotionally fit as well. And just like physical fitness, it can be uncomfortable. It takes consistency and dedication, but the reward does pay off over time. So let's have a look at what are two things that we can start doing in order to develop our emotional fitness. Now imagine you were going to start a physical fitness routine, right? Now, firstly, hopefully you had listened to some of our other episodes, so you have a baseline for your physical fitness routine. But ultimately, you would start with doing something like going for a jog and maybe doing a bit of lifting. Cool. Doesn't need to be very intense, doesn't need to be very complicated. You just need to get the basics right. So what I'm going to share with you now is a really, really easy way, right? Two things you can do to really start building that emotional fitness from the ground up. The first thing that you can do to improve your emotional fitness is get better at identifying exactly the emotion you are experiencing. Most people say they feel good or they feel bad. Now imagine going to a doctor and saying, well, I don't feel so good, I feel bad. And he says to you, okay, you feel bad. That's your diagnosis. How the hell are you meant to fix that problem if you are just labeling it as bad? We need more specificity. The doctor needs to know exactly what kind of bad you are feeling. Is it your stomach? Is it your chest? Is it your leg? Is it your left toe? Does it feel painful? Does it feel uncomfortable? What are the specific symptoms that you're experiencing? Because once we know the specific experience that you're having, we can get closer to the root cause of that problem. And that is exactly what we want to do with our emotions. Instead of simply labeling them as good or bad, what we want to do is figure out what flavor of bad are you experiencing? Because there's a lot of ways to feel bad, isn't there? I can feel overwhelmed. I can feel angry, I can feel sad, I can feel guilty, I can feel resentful. There are many different ways and flavors of feeling bad. So if we can identify specifically which emotion we are experiencing, it is easier to work back to the root cause. If I'm feeling angry, well then I can work backwards and ask myself, what am I feeling angry about? What is this anger trying to tell me about what's going on? If I feel guilty, then I can go through the same process. What is this emotion trying to tell me? With anger, someone might have violated my rules. They might have overstepped my values, and that's why I'm angry. If I feel guilty, I probably violated my rules. I did something that's not in line with the person I want to be. Two very different root causes. And we can use that root cause to identify the changes we need to make to overcome that emotion. So that is number one, identifying specifically which emotion you're experiencing. Number two, self-regulation. Now, another way to put this is impulse control. Now, a lot of the time, and we even said earlier, right, our emotions influence how we behave. So they influence what we do or what we don't do. I can say, well, why did I slam the door? Because I was angry. Why did I skip out on the party? Because I was feeling anxious. But in reality, is that really true? No. Our emotions don't make us do things, but they do influence us. And the key is being able to recognize the emotion and respond to the emotion. Now, here's the difference. There is a difference between responding to an emotion and reacting to an emotion. Reacting to an emotion is giving in to the impulse that that emotion is asking you to do. When I feel angry, I want to slam a door, I want to throw my toys out the cot, I want to punch someone in the face. That is a reaction. A response would be to say, this is what I'm feeling. What am I going to do instead of the impulse that I feel? What is going to be a more productive way to respond to this feeling that will move me forward instead of keeping me in the cycle of that emotion? Because isn't that very often the case? We get angry, or we feel any emotion, and we act on the impulse, thinking it'll make us feel better, when in fact, it just makes us feel more of the same emotion. It's like a monster that's just fueling itself. So the key with self-regulation is to respond instead of react. Now, this is a lot easier said than done, right? And the way I would suggest, and the tool I would like you to take away from today, is that when we try to respond to our emotion, it's very hard to negotiate with our thoughts and our impulses when we are in the physical state of that emotion. A better way is to use what we call a bottom-up approach. Now, a top-bottom approach, which is the opposite, would be trying to think our way out of an emotion, which often doesn't work. A bottom-up approach is about first addressing the body, the physical sensation component of the emotion. Because when we calm the body, the mind tends to follow. So when we feel this emotion, when we are tempted to react and simply impulsively behave based on what the emotion is feeding us, the trick is to calm the body down first, to take a breath, to go for a walk, to shake our body out, to change our physical state. And as we can neutralize that physical sensation, we are in a better position to change the psychological components, the story we're telling ourselves, the pattern of focus that we've fallen into. So when it comes to self-regulation, the bottom-up approach is a really good place to start. So in summary, when we're trying to deal with negative emotions, whether that is anger, whether it is stress or anxiety or overwhelm or sadness or grief, there's two key things we can start to do to develop the emotional fitness to move past those emotions and get back to a solid baseline more effectively. Number one, we can start identifying specifically how we feel instead of just giving a vague bad or good. The second thing we can do is we can then start to use a bottom-up approach to calm ourselves down. Taking a breath, going for a walk, shaking out our body. Because when we're able to do that, we can neutralize the emotion enough so that we can think clearly. Once we can think clearly, we can get to the root of that emotion more effectively and therefore take better action. It's like getting into the car and a million lights turn on the dashboard. Instead of freaking out, instead of ignoring and bottling up the problems, take a breath, look at the signal that it's trying to tell you, and start working your way to the root cause. And not only doing that, so doing that is not only going to help you solve the emotion, it's going to help you solve the problems and challenges in your life that the emotions are coming up in response to. And by doing this, not only can we improve our emotional well-being, but we can fix so many of the challenges in our life that we faced. Because ultimately, emotions are not good or bad. Feelings are not facts. Feelings are feedback. And if we learn the language of emotions, not only can we improve our emotional well-being, but we can improve our own personal development by listening to those messages and focusing on the areas that we need to improve. So, I hope this episode was helpful today. If it was, please like, subscribe, share, comment, whatever platform you're on, and give us some more information. Let us know the topics that you'd like to hear on this podcast, anything to do with building a better body and brain so we can show up at our best, we can perform at our best, and we can create the change in the world that we really want to create. Thank you for joining me today. Have an amazing rest of your day. Keep going and keep growing. Halas. Oi.